皆さんこんにちは。大変お待たせいたしました。今回はご参加そしてご視聴誠にありがとうございます。これより国内最大級のデータ活用イベントネットアップインサイトジャパンスタートです。皆さん世界の大きな変化へ対応に尽力されていることかと思います。ですが今日はこんな時代だからこそ皆さんと共に次の時代を次の社会を考えていきたいと思っております。これからのセッションをどうぞこのリゾートに来ているような気分でリラックスしてお楽しみください。今年から装いを新たにオンラインでお届けするネットアップインサイトジャパン。今回は日本全国からそして海外からも多数の方にご参加いただいております。データを活用することでビジネスや社会をどのように変えていけるのか、そのためにすべきことは何か、必要な技術は何か、そんな皆様の課題にデータのエキスパートたちが語っていきます。たくさんの成功事例もご紹介いたします。今回はなんとオンデマンド合わせて100ものセッションを準備しております。今日のキーノートセッションの後半では、デジタル技術によってコロナの封じ込めに成功した台湾の IT 担当大臣オードリー大使からもデータ活用や DX について語っていただきます。皆様お楽しみください。申し遅れましたが本日司会を務めさせていただきます美里と申します。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。さあそれではいよいよセッションのスタートです。弊社代表執行役員社長中島シハブドゥグラより皆様へご挨拶とネットアップの戦略について語っていただきます。それではシハブさんよろしくお願いいたします。
皆さんおはようございます。ネットアップの中島シハブです。皆様いつも大変お世話になっております。本日はお忙しい中、ネットアップ最大のイベントネットアップインサイトジャパンにご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。私たちは毎年最新の技術情報とお客様事例をご紹介する大きなイベントを開催してきました。今回は初めてオンラインで開催します。これまでご来場いただいた方々からは高い評価を多くいただき、グローバルに加えて日本でも続けて開催してほしいというご要望を受けています。こうした声にお応えして日本での単独開催を続けることを決めました。こうして皆さんとグローバルのそして日本の最先端のベストプラクティスを共有できることを嬉しく思います。今後ともどうぞよろしくお願いします。今回この大変な時期にご参加いただいた皆様にすぐにお役に立つ情報を多くご用意させていただきました。ぜひ最後までお付き合いください。今回の INSIGHT Japan 開催にあたり、これまで同様に多くのパートナー様にご協賛をいただきました。この場をお借りしてお礼申し上げます。今日からこれらのスポンサー様と一緒にオンラインならではのコンテンツをお届けします。データ活用、クラウド、ワークスタイル変革、バックアップ、自動化、AI など今話題になっている重要なビジネステーマについてさまざまなソリューションをご紹介していきます。ライブ配信だけでなく3月19日までオンデマンドで配信します。皆様のご都合に合わせてご活用ください。さて、多くの企業が在宅勤務を始めて1年になろうとしています。皆様は快適に過ごすために何か工夫をしたり、便利なアイテムを買ったりしましたか？私は膝の上でノートパソコンを受ける クッション付きトレイを毎日使っています。ヨギボーです。これです。リラックスしたスタイルで仕事をするようになったことで、アイデアが浮かびやすくなったように感じます。美里さん、
はい、
毎日ウェブ会議でやって、必ずウェブ会議で言う言葉、あるいは言われる言葉、何でしょうか？
ウェブ会議で必ず言われる言葉、何でしょうね。
ミュートだよ。You are on mute。昨年は日常生活とビジネスが大きく変化しました。私たちも社内でデジタルツールを使いながらいろいろ試行錯誤しています。社内でテーマごとにバーチャル組織を作り、スキルアップしたり、組織の多様性を議論したり、お客様の業界の勉強をしたりして、部門を加えてディスカッションが生まれ、新しいアイデアが見えるようになりました。こうしてより高いレベルのサービスを提供する準備を続けました。ご存知の通り、厳しい時期でも成長成功されている企業もたくさんいらっしゃいます。データを業務と経営の活用すれば、事業環境の大きな変化に素早く対応できます。そして、組織がイノベーションを生み、利益と成長につなげることができます。困難の後の大きな成長に向けてデータ管理のインフラを今こそ整備しましょう。今日から始まる INSIGHT Japan では、ぜひ覚えておいていただきたいことがあります。データサービスレイヤーの最適化とデータサイロから脱却が今後の鍵である。こうした考えのもと、皆さんのデータファブリックを構築していただきたいというのが、私たちがお伝えしたいことです。企業の IT インフラを担う皆さん、活用する皆さんが今取り組むべきことは、社内やクラウドに前提するあらゆるデータを業務プロセスで活用できるようにすることです。これを実現するためには、データサービスレイヤーの構築最適化とデータサイロからの脱却を実施しなければなりません。海外でも国内でもデジタルトランスフォーメーションはもう半ばを過ぎています。データ活用の変革でビジネスを推進している企業はデータファブリックを活用してどんどん進んでいるのです。今日はキーノートの中でグローバルな話題と日本にフォーカスした講演を用意しました。では、ここでネットアップの CEO ジョージ・クリアンからグローバル戦略と日本への期待をご説明します。Hello, George. Thank you for joining us today. How are you? I am with our Japan audience online to hear from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Shihab-san, and thank you to all of you for joining INSIGHT Japan 2021. I wish I could be there in person today to spend time with our team, to enjoy discussions with you, and my early morning walks in Tokyo, like I always do when I visit your beautiful country. But this year is different. For many years, we've said the world is changing, but no one could have predicted the relentless pace of transformation driven by COVID-19 that we've seen over the past year. While change and modernization can be difficult, if we treat it as a familiar constant, we can spot windows of opportunity. And Japan has a rich history of being able to do just so. At NetApp, we're focused on turning challenges into opportunities. And throughout this event, we'll talk about the challenges our customers and partners in Japan are facing, and the important role that NetApp can play in helping them and you unlock the best of cloud. The global pandemic has clearly driven disruption, except this time it's happening at a global scale and at unprecedented pace. Speed and agility are critical for organizations to succeed. Cloud, broadly defined, is the platform to run your digital business, to engage your customers and employees. And data is at the heart of everything. Data is the currency, as it is a digital business's understanding of its customers, employees, and suppliers. So let's talk about how organizations can thrive in the new world that is forming. We begin with the IT industry itself. The leading cloud providers are building massive global digital business platforms with powerful ecosystems. And there are specialists who can now leverage the massive scale of these digital platforms to reach customers around the world. Specialists can leverage and contribute to these large digital platforms and ecosystems to rise above the legacy IT generalists. Like you, we understand the power of specialists, being the very best in the world at what we do. It is at the core of who we are and how we respond to industry disruption. Our transformation started long before COVID-19, as we considered how cloud and digitization would impact customers, the industry, and NetApp. While our competition focused on building their own competitive clouds and failed, we prioritized you, our customers' needs, and chose to partner with the leading cloud providers. Let me share our thought process and strategic choices, because they might help you as you consider your own path forward. We figured out what customers really needed. Data, hybrid, and multi-cloud are both very hard, enduring problems, and customers needed a data fabric to deliver the right data to the right place at the right time. Then we doubled down on what NetApp is a specialist at, building on almost 29 years of experience. We've built a portfolio of cloud data services, software, and systems to help you lead with data. But we're exploiting what we're really good at in new ways by bringing the performance, efficiency, and availability of the mission-critical enterprise data services to the leading public clouds, and bringing the simplicity and flexibility of the public cloud to the enterprise data center. We're partnering with the industry leaders and the world's biggest clouds to build a new ecosystem. And we're building on an open architecture, unlike the walled gardens you see from other enterprise cloud vendors. We're building upon all of this with additional capabilities, talent, and business evolution. You will see evidence of this with new members of our leadership team, acquisitions, keystone services, continuous software innovation, and deep co-development with the world's leading cloud providers. So what does that mean for you? We're the specialists who are helping you unlock the best of cloud across public, hybrid, and on-premises. We're helping you demand more from your cloud. For example, we help you build, deploy, and optimize new applications much more quickly on public, hybrid, and multi-cloud, just like CyberAgent does. We help you embrace the best of both public and private clouds so that you can deploy and scale your digital business initiatives with the best hybrid cloud, just like AstraZeneca does. And we can help you consolidate, modernize, simplify, and automate your data center infrastructure with an easy path to the cloud to enable you to make data as a service available to your stakeholders, just like Yahoo Japan does. And we continue to work with many important partners across Japan. For example, our relationship with Fujitsu continues to evolve, helping us drive joint customer success in Japan. And our data fabric strategy continues to make excellent progress. I'm excited about the innovations we've been announcing since last year. In public cloud services, we have, through the acquisitions of Spot, Talon, and CloudJumper, and the enhancement of our cloud storage capabilities, established a platform for highly optimized application-driven infrastructures. It complements and extends the data fabric, saving customers up to 90% of their cloud costs. We uniquely combine the flexibility of serverless computing with storageless data persistence to give you the simplest, easiest way to manage, continuously optimize infrastructure for enterprise applications, cloud native, and virtual desktop applications. We released the 9.8 version of ONTAP, the world's #1 storage operating system that powers both enterprise and public cloud environments. We're integrating our portfolio in new and unique ways to build the most efficient solutions for the enterprise data center and for the hybrid cloud. And we are an absolutely reliable provider. We've been the market leader with respect to the domestic NAS market for 15 consecutive terms and still hold that position today based on IDC research. In Japan, we're making large investments in new technologies such as autonomous cars, energy optimization, and the carbon-free lifestyle to tackle social responsibility challenges by helping customers build the right data fabric. We have a great lineup of speakers for INSIGHT Japan. Next, you will hear from our Japan strategy leader, Shihab Nakajima. And later today, he and NetApp's Matt Watts will share how NetApp plays an important role in healthcare by helping companies like AstraZeneca, which is working on manufacturing a COVID vaccine. You will also hear from Japanese customers, such as Yahoo Japan and CyberAgent, who have escalated the management of big data by leveraging NetApp's Kubernetes technologies. Please enjoy the rest of the show. I hope you will find INSIGHT Japan beneficial for your business. And now, Shihab, I'll pass this back to you.
Thank you, George. NetApp の CEO、ジョージ・クリエンでした。ジョージの話にもありました通り、ビジネスの成功の鍵はデータの活用です。デジタル技術は今もどんどん進化し、私たちの生活やビジネスを変えています。少し前まで私たちはリアルの世界の業務効率向上や顧客満足度を向上させるためにデジタル技術を利用しようとしてきました。つまり、リアルの世界とデジタルの世界をつなげることを目指していました。しかし、時代は変わってきています。人や社会を多くのデータに囲まれ、デジタルでつながることが当たり前になっています。今やリアルな世界はデジタル世界の中の一部なのです。デジタルはお客様と接して体験を提供できる存在になりました。こうした中では私たちは考え方をこれまでと大きく変える必要があります。 データを有効活用できるようになれば、データの価値が大きく変わり、ビジネスの新しい武器になります。ネットアップの役割はデータを有効活用できるようにすることです。皆さんはそのデータを使ってビジネスの拡大に集中していただくことができます。企業のデータ活用について興味深い調査があります。ハーバードビジネスレビューの調査では、口座化されたデータの半分しか意思決定に使われていません。また、データ分析をする時間の 80% はデータの検索と準備に使われています。では、なぜデータ活用ができないインフラになってしまったのでしょうか。それはデータサイロです。オンプレミス環境ではデータ管理が十分にできていました。その後、クラウドサービスが普及し始めます。クラウドは手軽に使えるため、部門ごとに使われています。今や情報システム部門は分散したデータの存在を把握しきれなくなっています。これがデータのサイロ化の始まりです。30% 近い企業がこの課題に直面しています。このデータのサイロから脱却し、データを有効活用できるデータサービスレイヤーを実現するプラットフォームがネットアップのデータファブリックです。データファブリックは眠っていた企業内のデータから価値を最大限引き出し、次の一手に活用することができる唯一の解決策です。当社がこれまでをオンプレミスで蓄積してきた経験と技術によってパブリッククラウドにエンタープライズクラスの堅牢性をもたらすことができます。また逆に長きにわたってクラウドで培ってきたノウハウはオンプレミスにクラウドのシンプルさと柔軟性をもたらすことができます。オンプレミスとクラウドのメリットをお互いに生かすことができるのです。そしてデータファブリックを実現する技術は常に進化しています。ネットアップはデータを中心に考えて、アプリケーションの特性に合わせて最適なデータ管理ができるようにデータファブリックに集中してさらなる投資開発をしています。では、データサービスレイヤーを最適化するために考えるべきことは何でしょうか。データサービスレイヤーを構築する際に必要なポイントを整理しておきます。データ環境を理解する。データを連携させる。プロセスを自動化する。アプリケーションで使えるように最適化する。データを保護する。そしてセキュリティを担保する。この6つは皆さんに共通して非常に重要なテーマです。ぜひ覚えておいてください。ネットアップの製品とサービスは データサービスレイヤーに必要なすべてをカバーしています。セッションでその手法をぜひご覧ください。ここからデータサービスレイヤーで行えるポイントの一部をデモンストレーションでご覧ください。運用操作が直感的で簡単であることに驚くかもしれません。デモはソリューションアーキテクトの小原からご紹介します。小原さん、今日限り CDO のタイトルを与えます。Chief Demonstration Officer、よろしくお願いします。
はい、シハブさん、こんにちは。ご紹介いただきました。ちょっとデモンストレーションで驚かせます。CDO の小原です。よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。小原さん、CDO。先ほど、ジョージも紹介していましたが、アストラゼネカが短期間で新型コロナのワクチンを開発しました。そこで、ネットアップのデータファブリックも活用されていたそうですね。データファブリックを手軽に早く始められることを見せてもらえますか？
はい、ネットアップのデータファブリックは、オンプレミスとさまざまなパブリッククラウドの間での自由自在なデータ連携を実現するものです。アストラゼネカの事例もデータファブリックでオンプレミスやクラウドの間で適材適所でデータを使い分けるといったことでスピード感のある経営を実現したといった事例ですね。そこで今日はまず最初にオンプレミスのネットアップストレージをお使いいただいているお客様がクラウドを活用して手軽に災害対策を始めてみるというところからご紹介します。ネットアップではいくつか災害対策のソリューションをご提案できますが、例えばクラウドバックアップサービスという手軽に始められるクラウドへのバックアップサービスはいかがでしょうか。それではこの画面をご覧ください。この画面はクラウドマネージャーというネットアップのクラウドサービスの統合管理コンソールです。オンプレミスのネットアップストレージも簡単に操作できます。ここから Amazon S3 にバックアップをしてみましょう。この画面からオンプレミスのネットアップストレージを選んで、バックアップの設定画面を開きます。次にバックアップする先のクラウドの種類を選んで、そしてバックアップを取る認証情報を入力します。そしてバックアップを取る間隔と保存の世代数を選びます。ここは毎日バックアップを取り30日分残すという設定にしてみます。そしてバックアップ対象のデータボリュームを選んで設定完了です。設定が入ってますね。元の画面に戻ると、オンプレミスのネットアップストレージから Amazon S3 にバックアップの矢印が伸びています。バックアップの画面を開いてみると、このようにバックアップが取れていることがわかります。
なるほど。これなら手軽に始められそうですね。ところで、このオンプレミスのストレージにあるデータをクラウド上に持っていってデータを解析し、その結果を別のクラウドで活用するといったことを手軽にできないものでしょうか？
はい、もちろんできます。ネットアップはオンプレミスのネットアップストレージと同等の機能を提供するクラウドストレージを AWS、Microsoft Azure、そして Google クラウドの上でも提供しています。この画面をご覧ください。この画面ではオンプレミスのネットアップストレージに加えてさまざまなクラウドの上にネットアップのクラウドストレージ、クラウドボリュームズオンタップをセットアップしてあります。クラウド上でのセットアップは簡単な操作で1時間もあれば終わります。今回はオンプレミスから Google クラウド上にデータを連携してみましょう。設定するにはこのようにクラウドのアイコンをドラッグ&ドロップしてコピー対象のボリュームを選び、コピー先のクラウドで使うディスクのタイプを選んで、コピー先のデータボリュームの名前を決めて、コピーするときにネットワークを全部使わないように制限をかけて、コピーするときのポリシーを選び、 そして、コピーするタイミングを決めます。今回は毎週コピーするようにしてみますね。そして最後に設定内容を確認して完了です。はい、オンプレミスから Google クラウドにデータをコピーする矢印が伸びていることがわかりますね。このようにオンプレミスやクラウドを使わず、その時々の事情に合わせて適材適所でデータを活用できるようになります。いかがでしょうか？
これはまさにデータサイロを作らないというコンセプトを実現するソリューションですね。最後に、今は新型コロナの影響により在宅勤務を増えていますが、その一方でデータを暗号化して身代金を要求するランサムウェアを攻撃の被害も増えています。このような問題にネットアップはどのような提案ができますか？
はい、ランサムウェア攻撃の対策のポイントはいくつかありますが、攻撃に早い段階で気づいて被害の拡大を抑えるということと、万一暗号化されてしまってもデータを復旧できるようにバックアップしておくということが大切です。ネットアップでは AI の技術も活用してオンプレミスやクラウドを可視化し、最適化のお手伝いをする運用ツールクラウドインサイツも提供しておりますが、その中の拡張機能の一つとしてランサムウェア攻撃を検知して、そしてそれを通報し、また瞬時にデータのバックアップをするといった機能も提供しておりますので、これをお見せします。この画面はクラウドインサイツのランサムウェア対策機能の画面です。このデモ環境では赤色の棒グラフのようにたくさんのランサムウェア攻撃を疑われる挙動を見つけています。また普段とは異なる、気になる挙動も見つけたようですね。試しに一つ詳しく見てみましょう。はい、どうやら5時間前にランサムウェア攻撃によるものと思われる大量のファイルアクセスが行われています。1人のユーザー権限で1時間の間に5000以上のファイルを操作されてますね。これを見つけてクラウドインサイツは念のため自動的にバックアップをしてくれています。そしてどうやらこの方がランサムウェアに感染している可能性がありますね。もっと詳しく見てみましょう。午後5時から6時の間でたくさんのファイルが読み書きされ、ファイル名も書き換えられています。ファイル名に RDM という名前がついてますね。これは典型的なランサムウェア攻撃の一つです。このファイルがどこに格納されているかといったこともこのように簡単に確認できます。ネットアップのクラウドインサイツを使えばこのようなこともできます。いかがでしょうか？
よくわかりました。ありがとうございます。小原さん、ありがとうございました。皆さん、いかがでしたでしょうか？このようにネットアップは簡単な操作でクラウドの可能性を最大限に引き出せる今使えるデータファブリックソリューションを提供できることを実感していただけたでしょうか？小原はこの後クラウドジャーニーというセッションで今の内容を詳しくご説明しますので、ぜひご覧ください。次にテクノロジーについてグローバルなトレンドを少し聞いてみましょう。ネットアップチーフテクノロジーエヴァンジェリストマット・ワッツを登場してもらいます。Hello, Matt. How are you today?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Shihab-san. It's a pleasure to be here.
Matt, you are the Chief Technology Evangelist, and you are talking to so many customers around the world. Tell us, looking back in the history and going forward, how are things going? What do you see around you? What do you hear from the industry?
Yeah, so let me say it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of NetApp INSIGHT in Japan this year. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think looking back is always useful because it helps us think about, what the future could be. And I think that looking back over the last 5 or 10 years within IT, I've seen 3 waves. And I think the first wave was very much infrastructure focused. And it's important to know that each wave doesn't go away. What happens is as new ones form, they become the areas where people see the biggest opportunities. So we still have this infrastructure wave. And really, there's a lot of companies looking at how do we modernize legacy platforms? How do we use better technology, physical technology, to improve the user experience of some of these enterprise applications we have in our organization? So that first wave is still very much an area of innovation and investment. I think the second wave became much more about automation, about speed, about agility. Companies started to look at virtualization, at ways of starting to give more control to the application owners, to the developers. We still had good opportunities to reduce cost, to increase efficiencies, but it became much more about enabling speed. And now I think we're very much in the third wave. And the third wave for me is cloud. And that covers so many different areas and so many different types of technology, but it's where everybody is focused. Some of the recent numbers that I've heard from the analysts say that up to 97% of companies are now looking towards a multi-cloud strategy, and about 83% of companies are very much building hybrid cloud strategies. And again, it's about creating new possibilities. It's about enabling new speed. It's about all of those things. So as we travel through these waves, we have to not only think differently about IT, not only do we have to think differently about the tools, the technologies, the applications that will be involved, we have to think differently about the skills, because the skills that we require from our people within these different waves are very, very different. And I think we're now starting to see the fourth wave. And I think it's still very early, because I think a wave only really forms when it's something that everybody can benefit from. But I think the fourth wave will be AI. And I think it's still early because we don't have enough skills so that every organization can take advantage of it. But that does mean that every organization should be starting to gear up to be able to take advantage of it. And the quantities of data that we're talking about in this new wave are massive. So data will become increasingly at the heart of what it is that companies are looking to do. And AI will be that new way of how do we exploit these massive quantities of data. So I think very much three waves currently exist. And the fourth wave, very much related to AI type capabilities, is starting to emerge. And it's what companies and organizations and IT in particular need to be ready for.
Very interesting. So, listening to you, and I was thinking through those three waves and the next fourth wave coming, the role of data, or how the data is going to change, and what is the impact on the industry going to happen with each wave as you see it?
So what's interesting for me, Shihab-san, is that with each wave, data has become more important. Data has changed. If you think back to the first wave, data was just what got created by a user or an application. As we moved into the second wave of virtualization, suddenly the definition of data started to change. Data suddenly became the application, the operating system, the virtual machine, and the data being created. And because that definition changed, it meant we could create new possibilities, we could unlock new opportunities. As we go into the third and into the fourth wave, data defines everything. It is the information coming at us from sensors. It is, information being created by users, by applications. And increasingly, it's not just how do we manage that, it's how do we find the right tools and technologies to be able to truly extract value from that. We are becoming data-driven, and organizations need to put data at the heart of their business.
Yeah, so let me jump to the next question, Matt. So, of course, you live in Europe, you are talking to customers in Europe and around the world. You know, the customers are going through different stages in their digitization journey, let's say. Tell us some of the innovative examples that you have seen around in the industry as they move through different phases in their digitization. And more specifically, what is the role of the data fabric in this innovation?
So there's two that immediately come to mind, Shihab. I was lucky enough to work with a company, a smaller company based out of Serbia called 3 Lateral, a fascinating organization born out of the gaming industry, now doing a lot more studio work and developing software for the future. They've created a rig they call the Sunflower. It is 100 high-definition video cameras, and you walk into the rig and they scan your face from different dimensions. And they use this to look to obviously create new gaming characters, new movie characters, but they're starting to look into healthcare and lots of other industries. Talking of quantities of data, they're gathering 150 megabytes of data per second. Each facial scan they do is 1 petabyte of data. So I met with their CEO, Vladimir Mastilovic, and asked him the challenges. And he said, my first challenge is the speed that we need to collect data and the capacity. And I said, that's fine, that's easy for us to deal with. He said, my second challenge is that I need to modernize the way we develop our software because we want to sell this software to other organizations. I said, that's fine. I said, what's next? He said, we've just been bought by Epic Games and we need to share our data with Epic Games locations across North America. And I said to him, you need a data fabric. You need to be thinking about how you make technology investments that are part of a fabric that enables all these different parts of your journey. And since then, we've been helping introduce different elements of technology that have been bringing their data fabric to life to enable them to achieve all of these different possibilities. And the other one, I think, quickly is AstraZeneca. The challenge that AstraZeneca had is that every cloud is different. How do you manage data securely, efficiently, in the most beneficial way to you as a company when every cloud is different? So we've helped them to build their data fabric in their quest to bring the vaccines to life by enabling them to consistently manage data across all of the different clouds that they want to work with. So data fabrics are very, very important part of companies' futures.
So what I hear from you, the data fabric is not related to a certain size of a company or to a certain industry, but it is something that you would apply to any kind of industry, any size of company or government or public sector, whatever.
Absolutely. A data fabric is a strategy that you should be thinking about as you think about the cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, whatever cloud is. And cloud is a wave. It affects everybody. Therefore, the data fabric is a possibility and an opportunity for everybody.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me just switch to another type of question. So, there are many establishments or enterprises that have announced clear keywords in their digitization strategy. A commitment to the cloud, such as cloud first, cloud only, everything on the cloud. These kind of words are becoming big strategies among the enterprises, And so from a practical point of view, to achieve these visions or to achieve those kind of goals that the companies are or the customers are trying to do, what is the advice you can give to the companies to make this slogan more of a practical and achievable goal?
A topic fascinates me, Shihab-san, because if I look back 2 or 3 years ago, in different countries, a lot in Europe and the US, I would ask people the question, what is your cloud strategy? And they would say, cloud first. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to point out that that's technically not a strategy, that's a mandate. So I would then ask them, what's your strategy to go cloud first? And they would say Amazon or Microsoft. And again, I would have to point out, well, that also is a destination. So you have a strategy or a mandate to go to cloud first with Amazon or Microsoft, but what's your strategy and why? And that was where it got a little bit more vague. My advice to every organization right now is cloud first is a great question to ask, but it's a question. And the answer to that question has to be value. If you're thinking we're going to go to the cloud first for this particular application or for this part of our business, then you need to be able to answer the question as to why. What is the value you will get by going cloud first? And I think that got lost a little bit in those early days. People just were going to the cloud because they thought it would be cheaper or they thought it would be more efficient. And those are not necessarily the benefits you get from the cloud. The cloud gives you access to an entire playground of tools that you can use for different testing and development and for different levels of innovation. And that's why you go to the cloud. And I think a data fabric is very much a part of that plan, that strategy you can put in place that enables you to go to the cloud when you are ready and have that freedom of choice to be able to work with the cloud you need to work with when you need to work with it, and to make changes as you see different values being delivered by different cloud providers.
Interesting. Another question. So, of course, with the pandemic now transitioning to the next phase, vaccinations started happening, containment hopefully will start happening of the spread of the virus. And hopefully we'll start inching towards the other side of the mountain, if you say so. What preparations you see or hear that are taking place to get us ready for the transition to the next phase beyond the pandemic or after the pandemic? What are the best practices that you hear, some of the things that you hear from the customers?
Great question again, Shihab-san. I think one of the things I think we saw was that the pandemic actually unlocked some possibilities for us. And what I mean by that is before the pandemic, we had companies that were maybe nervous about going to the cloud or were concerned about security in the cloud. A lot of companies found reasons not to do something because there wasn't a critical event that was forcing them to do it. What the pandemic did was it forced us to think differently. Suddenly, everybody's working from home. Those barriers of we can't use the cloud because of security, or we can't use virtual desktop because we're worried about something, those barriers came down because we had to. Suddenly, you can't just move people at home and let these barriers stay in place. So the pandemic has forced a change in organizations to think about, how do we break these barriers down to do something? But I think they were short-term fixes. So as we start to come out of the other side, I think the companies I'm talking to are now looking at what is the long-term future now of employees working from home. I don't know how it will be in Japan. Every culture, every country is different, but there is no way that the world is going to go back to having the same quantity of people working in the same locations in offices. We're going to have to start thinking differently about how do we create collaborative platforms? How do we secure? How do we ensure that data is available for teams to be able to remotely collaborate? So I think the big shift I'm seeing, the big plans are we need to get back to innovation. We need to get back to collaboration, and we need to put in place the tools, the technologies, the processes that will enable that to happen for a workforce that are not going to be coming back together in offices at any time soon.
Great. So innovation, collaboration, technology, and the process goes with it will be the keywords, I think, going forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Shihab-san. Enjoy the rest of NetApp INSIGHT.
Take care. マットからは海外のお客様を紹介しましたが、日本でもデータファブリックを構築することで成功されている企業が増えています。この後お届けする事例セッションでは、ニューノーマル時代のビジネスに挑戦する先進的なデータ活用をご確認いただきますので、ぜひご参加ください。最新技術の中でも特に関心が高いのがコンテナ、Kubernetes 環境での活用です。NetApp の技術やサービスやこの分野で先進的な取り組みをされている企業から大きなご評価をいただいています。柔軟で迅速な環境づくりにこれからもお役に立っていきたいと考えています。ここまでの話の中では、私たちがすでにデータ活用を実現していることをお感じいただけたでしょうか。プライベートでもパブリックでもクラウドサービスは当たり前に時代になりました。私たちはハイブリッド、マルチクラウド環境のデータ管理に必要な高度な技術を常に強化しています。NetApp はクラウドエンジニアスキル、コンサルティング力、お客様サポート、検証センター、ワークショップなどを用意して皆さんの課題解決にお役に立ちたいと考えています。データを活用し、皆さんのビジネスの新しい成長ステージに向けて新たな顧客体験を生み出せるよう一緒に進めましょう。それではここで雰囲気を変えてゲストスピーカーをお呼びたいと思っています。
ここからは特別講演です。皆さんお待ちかねの台湾 IT 担当大臣オードリー・タン様に特別にご登壇いただきます。デジタルを駆使したコロナ対策の最前線および DX を推進するためのポイントについてお話しいただきます。オードリー様は皆さんよくご存知の通り、台湾で最年少の大臣となられ、コロナの封じ込めなど数々の功績を挙げておられます。本日はデータの活用や成功の秘訣についてお伺いしていきましょう。それではオードリー様、よろしくお願いいたします。
Hello, I'm Audrey Tang, Taiwan's Digital Minister. I'm really happy to be here virtually by the invitation of NetApp Japan to share with you some thoughts around digital social innovation. I also look forward to a conversation, a Q&A with Shihab-san at the end of this talk. Now, what we're seeing here is the three pillars, fast, fair, and fun in terms of social innovation. The fast part pertains to collective intelligence, where each and every one of citizens can report whatever they deem as interesting, worthy of public scrutiny, and the peer-to-peer relationship on the public forums so that people can look and check whether this affects each one of us. For example, this is the PTT, the Taiwanese equivalent of Reddit. In 2019 December, a young doctor with the name No More Pipe reposted Dr. Li Wenliang's whistleblowing from Wuhan. And so Dr. Li Wenliang did save Taiwan people by essentially pointing out, and I quote, 7 new SARS cases from the Huanan seafood market in Wuhan, unquote. And so because of that, we started the health inspections for all flight passengers coming in from Wuhan on the very next day, the first day of 2020. And the people on PTT were really, really helpful in fostering a collective intelligence. And this shows that not only the government trusts the citizens to triage an emerging epidemic, but also the citizens trust each other enough because we enjoy the freedom of speech, of assembly, of the press, and so on. According to the Civicus Monitor, Taiwan is the top country in all of Asia in terms of these freedoms, and were recently also ranked as a full democracy. Now, what you're seeing here is the daily press conference by the CECC, the Central Epidemic Command Center, led by Minister Chen Shizhong, our commander. This daily live stream during the pandemic really showed that each and every one of us can actually get the ideas promoted on the national level. For example, back last April, there was a young boy that called the hotline 1922 saying, hey, all the boys in my class have blue masks, but all I get from the rationing mask was pink ones, and I don't want to wear pink to school. Well, the very next day, everyone in the CCC press conference wore pink, and showing not only gender mainstreaming and solidarity, but also is a really good chance to discover that each and every one of us can suggest to 1922 anything that we would like the counter-pandemic task force to do better. And the GovZero initiative adjoined the G0V, the TW, also played a big part. GovZero was already known for visualizing a lot of important environment-related infrastructure information. For example, this is the GovZero visualization of the loss community. So the loss community is people who care about environmental science, that set up very inexpensive air boxes that travels over, say, NB-IoT or other zero-G technology that measures the PM2.5 air quality all around Taiwan. So it's a data collaborative. What we're seeing in the data collaboratives is that people feel empowered that they can also be the data curators. And therefore, when we started out to ration the mask, we partnered with Howard Wu from Tainan and many other like Finjan Kiang and so on to build more than 100 different tools that displays the real-time availability of mask in stock. And we updated this every 30 seconds, so it becomes an open API. By trusting the citizens with open data, we ensure that people feel that this is actually a really co-created infrastructure that people can see with their own eyes while they're queuing, that this is a fair arrangement, and suggest changes and modifications if they, for example, discover that the pharmacies has already closed when the people in the more rural places are making their way to the pharmacies. And that directly led to independent analysis that promoted us to seek out private sector support. This is the 4 convenience stores working with Head of Cabinet Su Zhenchang, showing that while we're pre-ordering the mask and getting it delivered to a nearby convenience store is expanded around April time, and that has completely solved the queuing problem that initially saw in the pharmacies. But in addition to fast and fairness, I think fun is also important. We had a panic buying of tissue papers in April 2020, and the solution was that the head of cabinet wrote out this very funny picture that says each of us only have 1 pair of bottoms, because it's a wordplay in Mandarin to stockpile, as in stockpiling tissue papers is called tun, but bottoms is also called tun. And so people remember this and share this in a very viral fashion. And it has this table in the picture that says the tissue paper came from South American materials, whereas the medical grade mask came from domestic materials. And this is not just a one-shot thing. We have engagement teams, participation officers in each and every ministry that's in their accountability effort takes place through the spokesdog in the case of Ministry of Health and Welfare. So to give an account of, for example, social distancing, the spokesdog simply says, when you're indoor, please keep 3 Shiba Inus away, and outdoor 2 Shiba Inus away. Or on the idea of wearing mask, it says on the bottom right, wear a mask to protect yourself from your own unwashed hands, and showing what not to do in a very cute meme. And so this arrangement made sure that for each trending disinformation, we have a real-time response that takes on average just 60 minutes to roll out. And we can see with the collaboration by the citizens, we very quickly discover, for example, there was a rumor that says there was going to be $1 million fine for repeated hair perming. Again, the head of our cabinet basically said, I may be bald now, but I will not punish people with hair, and explained that this is labeling requirements, and a very funny picture in the bottom that says, however, if you perm your hair many times a week, it will damage not your pocket but your hair, and just look at the head of the cabinet to see what will happen to your head. Again, this is hilarious, this is very funny. But real-time discovery is also a data collaborative by the COFAX community of GovZero, by the bots built by Who's Call and also by Trend Micro. In collaboration with the International Fact-Checking Network, people can very easily long press a message on, for example, the Line platform and report any trending misinformation or disinformation for collaborative fact-checking. This, in conjunction with the election and referendum law changes, made sure that people could not simply share whatever they have seen on social media and get into a state of outrage without the independent fact checkers noticing, but rather the independent fact checkers will analyze the source material, often published as open data, and draw their own conclusions, and then the fact checks are then repackaged into very funny memes that reach the whole society.
オードリー・タンさんよりお話しいただきました。ありがとうございました。ここからのお時間は今回お話しいただきました内容を掘り下げていろいろお伺いしてまいります。シハブさん、何か気になったこと、ご質問などございますでしょうか。
オードリーさん、thank you very much. Let's start with innovation, a topic that is so critical to solve our current problems and also to set us to thrive towards the future. Sometimes, by nature, we tend to be risk averse, take small incremental improvements rather than disruptive steps forward. Our education system, our evaluation system, funding for startups, and so on are all factors that influence innovation. In your view, how can the private sector work with the public sector to accelerate innovation, encourage risk-taking, drive accountability, and ultimately transform ideas into actions and deliverables?
To me, social innovation are innovations that work with the society, not just for the society. And by with the society, I mean it's everyone's business, with everyone's help. For example, a year ago or so, in 2020, February 6th, we rolled out a social innovation called a mask rationing map. Many of you may have already heard of it. It's an idea done by Howard Wu Zhangwei from Tainan City. In 2020, early February, people were looking at a shortage of medical-grade masks. And in Taiwan, the Howard Wu and many other civic technologists from the GovZero community invented a way to show the availability of masks in the nearby stores and pharmacies, and in ways that you can just look at your phone or a chatbot or really more than 100 different applications. And when we roll out the initial API on February the 6th, it was updated every 30 seconds. Each and every pharmacy, more than 6,000 of them connected to the National Health Insurance Database, agreed to publish their real-time availability stock. This looks really good. However, it became apparent very quickly that in the pharmacies, and there are quite a few pharmacies that adopted another social innovation called a take-a-number system. These two social innovations, the map and the take-a-number system, bump into one another, causing spectacular failure. The reason is the pharmacies that adopted the system handed out their numbered cards instead of masks on the morning. And then getting the national health insurance cards from their customers, they store it in the store, and then during the lunch break, process it. Now, in the evenings, the customers go back with their numbered cards in exchange to their actual health insurance cards, as well as their rationed masks. So this is supposed to reduce queuing. just as the mask availability map is supposed to reduce queuing, because with the map, you wouldn't go to the pharmacy that have run out of masks. However, the map for those stores that adopted the take number system looks like this. It sells nothing in the beginning of the day. During the lunch breaks, it sells everything. And so not only did it look very unnatural, but also just plain wrong. People will go to those pharmacies expecting to see a full stock, and just to discover that it has already run out of those pre-ordered cards, those numbers. So the state has a responsibility then to be accountable, to give an account of what happens. We apologized very swiftly to the pharmacist, but instead of a top-down way to dictate that the private sector, that's to say the pharmacist, couldn't hand out a number, we simply said, what would you do? What are the possible improvements to this system? We're committed to apply your new ideas every Thursday. And that's the beginning of the weekly iteration cycle that lasted from February to around May, June of 2020. Every week, we roll out some new changes to the system. For example, we took an idea from a pharmacist that says, okay, why don't you simply on the map display two different fields, one for the opening hours during the morning to take a number, and one for the opening hours during the evening where you go back and take back the mask and your national health card. So on those pharmacies that adopt take number systems, you will see two different fields of opening hours, whereas in the pharmacies that doesn't use take number system and remains accurate, you only see one opening hour. So that's a data schema change suggested by someone in the front line. So listening to people closest to the pain is essential, and that's the secret to encourage risk-taking. Because for people who are already in the front line and looking at some problems with the system, their natural idea, their natural reaction are most often than not the direction that the system needs to be tweaked to. And at those times, it really pays to listen at scale, to make sure that each and every one with a better idea to improve this situation with our shared values toward our shared goals can just pick up the phone, call 1922, and suggest a better innovation to the public sector. So the public sector doesn't need to solve everything, but it does need to listen at scale, be accountable, and just deploy things in a fast iteration, weekly if possible.
Great. As a follow-up question to innovation, let's talk about the role of data in driving innovation. One of the themes in this event is break the data silos. So data is at the heart of many of your initiatives. In many cases, you see data spread across different users, applications, but in a silo way. Can you share your views of how you see innovation happening from breaking the silos of data and the ability to slice data, amplify data, analyze and apply in various new ways to drive new values or models?
I wouldn't break the silos, I would connect them. See, I think of data as a relationship, as a beginning of a relationship. For example, the mask availability data. If we publish it only once a day or once a week, then there's no way for the pharmacists and the civic technologists to co-create. But because we publish every 30 seconds, we publish as soon as we collect. So not only could they co-create, but also drive meaningful suggestions to optimize the system even more. From the data scientists that look at the data and see, for example, that the rural and the urban areas wasn't getting the same share of masks, that when people go to the pharmacies in the more rural area, that public transportation, maybe the opening hour of the pharmacy have already closed and things like that, and people who queue in line, just citizens who have a chatbot or a mask availability map on their phone can check for themselves Now, when the people queuing before them swipe their national health card, well, it actually depletes by 2 or by 3, nowadays by 10, and people expect to see that. And if it doesn't work like that, then they can report it in real time, improving the data quality. And all this is participatory data governance, it's data stewardship. I think people do prefer data stewardship that's shared across meaningful relationships. So my main suggestion will be to look at all the data stewards in all the data silos, build personal connections between them to find out who are the people who would be a kind of missing piece of puzzle on the data pipeline, to figure out that whether on the data lake there's additional inputs that will make this less biased and more diverse and more inclusive, and most meaningfully to the people who enjoy the data together. Now, I'm aware that there's also other more exploitative or extractive data relationships that's based on, for example, the surveillance state or the surveillance capitalism, where there wasn't any accountability for the relational case, but it's mostly a transactional case or even passive data collection. However, I do think that nowadays people feel that as long as they have some idea of how their data is going to be applied in a way that affects, hopefully positively, but also sometimes negatively, their daily life, we now have the right ideas and mindsets and skill sets to apply to a real data collaborative relationship across all the sectors. And so, of course, I share the idea about the master rationing map, but the map is from an earlier data collaborative in Taiwan, the Civil IoT Collective, which is again born out of something from the social sector, from the GovZero initiative, and also the Academia Sinica, our national academy, about the Airbox environmental sensing program, where thousands of people, even people in primary school, learn about data science and data stewardship by this real-time measurement device of air quality that writes to a distributed ledger every few seconds through NB-IoT, through zero-G network. Again, this is something that when people can get their hands on and people understand that they're contributing to climate science and data science, you don't need to teach data literacy anymore. It shows how to build a data coalition from very competent data operators, data stewards across the whole society. So a relational view on data is what I would suggest.
So we cannot have any dialogue without mentioning COVID, a headache that every human faces every day. Digital strategies and initiatives have helped Taiwan to overcome some of the COVID-19 challenges and is now well ahead of the rest of the world in terms of recovery and back to normal life. What digital strategies and initiatives are you working on for post-COVID-19? What advice would you give Japan to be prepared for post-COVID-19 to recover economy and thrive again?
My main advice to not only Japan, but pretty much everywhere in the world is to do what Taiwan did in 2004, right after our SARS incident in 2003. With the collective memory still fresh, we adopted new institutions, new designs, the new Communicable Diseases Act, the Central Epidemic Command Center, many legal frameworks that established back then enabled Taiwan to not having to declare a state of emergency this time around. And when SARS 3.0 came after COVID, maybe next year, maybe next decade, we need to be prepared. We need to be resilient. We need to have the not only the societal understanding and memory, but also the existing legal frameworks and data collections and data use frameworks that people feel comfortable with. Instead of rolling out new data collection points during a pandemic, which is very difficult, we need to figure that out well before the pandemic, as Taiwan played the SARS playbook this time around. So in Taiwan's case, during COVID, many more people became aware that they are data stewards and also using a very simple National Health Insurance Agency app, the NHI app, people could access their entire medical history, download things like X-ray scans to their phone and things like that. And all these were previously unheard of numbers of people suddenly become aware of it. Before the pandemic, there's not even 1 million people using that app. But now it's more than 5 million people, a growth of at least tenfold. It's the top downloaded app in both App Store on iOS and then also on Android Google Play Store in Taiwan for the past year. And so we will expand on that because people expect us to be more accountable, to take personal data protection even more seriously, to strengthen our privacy acts to be GDPR compliant, to establish a dedicated data protection authority, to strengthen existing data protection mechanisms so that each and every ministry understand for the private sector and also social sector collaborations, people need to feel safe and in a data collaborative position of mutual trust before people can embark new innovative projects to counter future pandemics or to counter climate change or to tackle the infodemic together. There's many other society-wide applications beyond that of COVID that can nevertheless learn from the same people-public-private partnership that's predicated on data stewardship and people's feeling of mutual trust, of they know what their data is being used and how their input can affect the actual use of these data, and also that the strong data protection mandate is there in each and every competent authority in the public sector.
Right. So the government in Japan is announcing major transformations for the society and environment. The ministries are considering a goal of abolishing new sales of conventional cars, those powered solely by internal combustion engines, and shifting towards hybrid cars and electric cars from the mid-2030s to slow the global carbon emissions. What should Japan start preparing from now to reach this goal, and more from the digital strategies point?
There's three key pillars in any digital social innovation, and that's fast, fair, and fun. For the first question, I already talked about the importance of a fast iteration, but I also need to say that fairness, that is to say, when people understand their contribution is fairly evaluated in any social project or environmental one, like countering climate change, as well as fun, that is to say, getting people to actually change their habits, not only because it's good for the earth, but also because it's fun. That also is equally important. For example, I would suggest that people see the climate impact of their everyday actions much more in a way that's visualized. One example is the MyMizu application from Japan, which showed the refillable water fountains nearby. That idea has been adopted in Taiwan by a social enterprise called Circuplus. And the Circuplus, which is a winner of the presidential hackathon here, turned MyMizu into something like a Pokemon Go game, where people can check in to the refillable stations to get their water filled instead of buying new plastic bottles, and thereby collect new coins, to complete missions, to find like-minded people, to have a discussion around a particular water refilling position, or even get real-time notifications when the heat damage likelihood increases in that locality, which is calculated in real time by, for example, the temperature, the direction of the wind, the speed of the wind, and so on, for the high-risk groups and so on. So by making the ability to get refillable bottles not just good for one's own health, but also good for the social health, and making it a social mission that's very much enjoyable, people change their habits gradually, like just checking in once for 2 months, and then suddenly people don't buy any plastic bottles anymore. And so the entire circular economy, the entire drive toward carbon neutrality, of course, takes a lot of design from, for example, cap and trade, the carbon tax, and so on the economic side. But equally important is the inclusive participation, so that people who think of new ideas, like wedding this Pokemon Go like game mechanics to the existing idea of Maimizu, can successfully transform a lot of people's habits toward environmental sustainability.
Okay, let's jump into another topic. Japan is facing major talent shortage in IT and in digitization. Can you provide your experience on how you would scale talent and achieve a depth of knowledge to sustain the economy and build the future for the next generations?
To build depth of knowledge, I think the idea of purpose-based learning is the most important one. Only when the entire society learns together in assistive, collective intelligence can we look at the structural issues, including climate change, the infodemic pandemic, many other things around the world as a whole, in a holistic way, and making sure that each and everyone is not excluded from contributing to solve this common problem to make a common purpose. For example, I filmed a short recruitment clip for young women in senior high school and undergrad in Taiwan to participate in cybersecurity, in which I said, well, when I was coding, the computer doesn't care my gender. The computer has never asked which gender I am in. And so because of this, I think this inclusive message of that one's biology should not determine one's destiny is very important. Another example is that we welcome people to visit Taiwan even during the COVID if they have the potential to contribute to science and technology in Taiwan. If you check out taiwangoldcard.com, you will find that anyone who has any science or technology contribution potential, they don't need to have a very high salary, they don't need to win an award or anything like that, as long as they're willing to stay in Taiwan, contribute to our common purpose, while also, of course, working with their original community, because people are teleworking a lot nowadays across the world. So instead of having to invest in Taiwan their money or find a Taiwanese employer, they need only to invest their time to work with the Taiwanese people on the global scale issues, fulfilling a shared purpose. Then you're welcome to stay in Taiwan, enjoying the healthcare and everything using the gold card. Again, this is a very, very inclusive way to grow the digitalization talent together, not on an individual to individual competition basis, but on a maximizing diversity and inclusion basis. And I firmly believe only with fresh perspectives from across the world's cultures can we actually discover the kind of configurations, the kind of innovations needed for the society to advance as a whole and sustain not only the economy, but also our environment and also our society.
Right, so an extension to the previous question. Japan is facing aging society. Introducing more talent from outside Japan will be critical for the future of the country. Can you share your thoughts around aging society and what Japan can do to become a role model in finding solutions that could be of future use for Asia and other countries around the world?
I think Taiwan also is an aging society for past few years now, with life expectancy over 80 years old. But with that said, last year we saw more than 250,000 people returning to Taiwan. And moreover, as I mentioned, the gold card enabled people who have never been to Taiwan to nevertheless choose to stay in Taiwan and live for up to 3 years at a time and renewable, while contributing to the society here. But economically, they may be teleworking to other places in the world. And so I think the most important thing here is to make sure it's not just economic participation for the elderly, not only about the influx of younger talent, but also about how the young and the elderly co-create in a meaningful way in also civic participation. In our national participation platform, join the gov.tw, the most active age groups are people who are between 7 and 17 and people who are above 65. That's to say, the 17 years old and 70 years old were the most and still are the most active groups because they care more about the long-term sustainability. And also, frankly speaking, they may have more time on their hands to think about public policies and participatory budgeting and other petitions and social issues. So to build solidarity, to make sure that those two age groups of people can co-create with each other's long-term view on the common good of the society, that is the most important. Indeed, personally, for the policies that we just discussed, including the mask rationing and so on, I very often seek out my grandma's advice. She is 88 years old now, and she has pretty good connection to the local community of her younger friends, like 77 years old, 60 years old, and so on. And altogether, I think they carry a lot of wisdom to make legible the emergent technological innovations so that it becomes familiar and understandable to the general public without this us versus them thinking. And so I think Japan and Taiwan shares in this regard that we are bringing technology to the people, not asking people to adapt to technology, and the co-creation across generations. This intergenerational solidarity, I think, is one of the keys in the aging society.
All right, so digital minister role. When you have multiple projects, limited budgets, and conflicting directions, how would you base your decisions forward?
When I have conflicting directions from people across different ministries, different sectors, I usually take all the sides. That is to say, I listen to people, and when I find that I cannot comprehend where they're coming from, I take a few days work off and I spend time with people in that particular position until I can argue from their perspective. And so basically, by taking all the sides and getting sufficient sleep every night, I sleep for 8 full hours until all the different positions have integrated into a shared value. I think the most important thing about juggling between multiple projects is if they're aligned to a same shared value, then people can complete these in any order, meaning that each sector and each ministry, each agency can finish whatever amount that they are able to finish and then just share it in a manner of open innovation with everybody else, and other people then complete the puzzle as they could. However, if the directions are opposing one another, or if this is a zero-sum game, then of course each move by each stakeholder cancels the effort done by the other stakeholder. So taking all the sides, finding common values, and then innovate in a way that doesn't leave anyone worse off, I think is the main quality. Now, as the digital minister in charge of social innovation, we're not limited by the government's budget. Rather, everything that I do makes sure that the civil society and the private sector can innovate on top of those state-sponsored innovations. For example, the mask rationing system, because it's based on open API, people were able to build independent analysis, were able to build, for example, better dispatch systems, pre-ordering systems from all the 4 major convenience store chains. And these convenience stores then looped in even more people than the people who could join during the pharmacies, because pharmacies have a limited opening hour and the convenience stores operates 24 hours a day. And so by opening up to the citizen-led and then later on private sector-led innovations, this people-public-private partnerships make sure that the social innovations fulfill the actual local needs instead of in a top-down manner limited by state budget. So working with the people instead of for the people, I think, is the main idea behind those social innovations.
I see. In the role of digital minister, who do you surround yourself with?
I surround myself with anyone who mentions my name, either my kanji name or my Japanese name, Odoritang, or my English name. And if you mention me on any place that is indexed by search engine or on the popular social media platforms such as Twitter, then I can see what you're talking about. And if I can contribute, I then chime in. And so basically, I do not have a filter bubble. I follow the hashtags that anyone mentions about either my name or my current work, for example, around Taiwan Can Help or around the SDGs, the Presidential Hackathon, and so on. Now, in my office, there is secondments, people who are seconded from each and every ministry that are related to social innovation. Now, they are volunteers, so not all ministries have sent people. For example, the Ministry of Defense never sent anyone. Maybe it has something to do with radical transparency protocols that I observed. But the people who do join, they join from the ministries for health and welfare, for public diplomacy, from foreign affairs, from culture, from education, National Communication Council, finance, law, many others. So what I'm trying to get at is that when people join my office voluntarily, the only thing that I ask is that they work out loud, contribute at least as much as they take away from this office learnings. And then also, most importantly, they must be willing to offer new perspective, fresh perspective on any particular issue that we're dealing with, a fresh perspective that's not shared by any other secondments, which is why we don't have any single ministry sending more than one person to my office, because otherwise they will look at things from a very similar angle. But what we want is a taking all the side holistic view on any emergent situation. So I surround myself first and foremost with the people on the great beyond on the internet, but also in real life, I surround myself with a set of people who are as diverse and motivated and willing to share as possible. So I would recommend anyone who are looking into recruiting a team for innovation to anchor their HR principles to first look for new perspectives, and second, a willingness to work out loud and share new ideas with pretty much anyone on the team and also with the general public.
Finally, for our IT and technology savvy audience, in your view, what are the digital technologies and trends that we should be monitoring or build for the future?
Well, instead of anticipating the future, be the future. Whereas IT connects machine and machines, digital connects people to people. And my job description is the direction that I would like all of us to look from a position of machine-to-machine connection to a future of people-to-people connection, and the future can arrive through us. And the job description reads, when we see the Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that the singularity is near, let us always remember the plurality is here. Thank you for listening. Live long and prosper.
オードリーさん、Thank you very much.
オードリー・タンさん、ありがとうございました。以上、特別講演でした。
そろそろ私からのお話が終わりに近づいてきました。繰り返しになりますが、INSIGHT Japan ではデータファブリックを構築してビジネスを成長につなげるヒントを100のセッションでご紹介します。皆さんの未来を描けるセッションをご用意しています。ゲストスピーカーやパネラーの方々からも幅広い見識をご紹介いただきます。そして先進的な取り組みを実践しているお客様の体験もご共有いただきます。 多くのセッションに参加し、アンケートにご回答いただいた方々には、スタンプラリー形式でポイントが貯まります。豪華なプレゼントをご用意しています。プレゼントので、たくさんご覧になってください。セッションは3月19日までオンデマンドでご覧いただきます。それではここで本日のキーノートを終わります。皆さんにとってネットアップはデータサービスを最適化できる唯一のパートナーです。データの価値を高め、戦略的に活用していただけるように、私たちが全力でお手伝いします。ありがとうございました。
以上でキーノートビジネスセッション終了となります。ここまでのお時間ご視聴くださった皆様ありがとうございます。例年とは違った形でのご参加となりましたが、いかがでしたでしょうか。それではブレイクアウトセッションのご案内です。この後は星野リゾート様、富士通株式会社様、株式会社サイバーエージェント様、Z ラボ株式会社様、その他スポンサー様のセッション数多く予定しております。ご希望のセッションをクリックして開始までお待ちください。また各セッションは共通の満足度投票を用意しております。満足度投票へのご協力よろしくお願いいたします。その他ブレイクアウトセッション以外にも各種コンテンツをご用意しております。また満足度投票へのご回答、各コンテンツをご覧いただきますと、ポイントが加算され、獲得されたポイントに応じて豪華商品をプレゼントするポイントラリーも実施中です。ぜひこの機会に満足度投票にご協力、また各コンテンツのご視聴、ダウンロードをよろしくお願いいたします。それではこの後も引き続きネットアップインサイトジャパンをお楽しみください。ありがとうございました。
ねえ、なんでクリックしたの？ダメって言ったでしょ。クリックしないでって読めなかった？もう仕方ないわね。私たちが待ちきれないのはネットアップインサイトジャパン。ピザの無料券が欲しい？ヨガのクーポン？ TikTok ダンス？悪いけどそれは無理。でもインサイトデジタルイベントでできることは、テクニカルコンテンツの配信、世界トップレベルのエキスパート、顧客の成功事例やビジネスパートナーが語る最新の情報、トレーニングや資格の取得、仲間とのネットワーク作り、そしてもちろん楽しいことも企画中。これが全部参加するだけで実現。あなたもエキスパートになれること間違いなし。それにクリックし放題、本当よ。スペシャリストを目指してクリック。ネットアップインサイトジャパンをお楽しみに。